Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Good evening, y'all. This is model award-winning author, speaker, but most importantly, this evening, your radio show host for Indie Beacon Radio. Tonight, we've got a really special guest by the name of J Stephen Sadler. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Wonderful. Comfortable with going by J Stephen? Stephen?
Yeah, that's what I usually go by. It's a little bit more work, but that is actually my name.
That's wonderful. I can, as somebody who has two names, I can understand having to explain people. You must say Shanalee, not Shanna, not Lee. No.
It's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. So definitely we'll call you by your proper name. You are a very interesting guy. I can tell you this. Somebody who has influenced, how do I say this? New York recipes, cooking, and now a book. I mean, how do you fit it all in?
You know, it's funny because it seems like it sounds like a lot of different things. But when you look at what I do, traveling around the world to find different foods, creating new dishes, having my bistro where we introduce those dishes, and writing about that, to me, it seems like one big thing that just kind of feeds one another. So it doesn't seem like this disjointed, I have irons in every fire. It seems like one thing that just goes together.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. I think a lot of people who, get inspired or want to do something great, they think people who have arrived, such as yourself, have kind of jumped off of a cliff, and it's a continuation of making something. But how it all kind of started. So I think every family has that family recipe. For my Irish side, it was my grandmother's Irish soda bread. I do have the recipe in her handwriting.
That's great.
Even if you're family, there's an interview process before you get a copy of it and a signing of documents. But even as important as that was for my grandmother, you have had a family recipe that, in essence, you took that recipe and changed your life, but you lost the recipe. So could you tell that great story about losing it?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I grew up in a family where my generation had always heard of this great family crumb cake, and we had never had it. In my parents' generation, they had all talked about where they had all had it, but they were too young, they didn't make it. And my grandparents and great uncles and aunts, some of them along the way had made this great cake, and it's a 400-year-old family recipe, my dad's side out of Austria. And so every holiday, somebody would take a stab at it and say, well, let me try it. So I think I kind of remember it. And everybody would be kind and say it was good, but it wasn't the same. And so I heard this for years and years. And when the last person who had the recipe, my grandmother, died, my uncle who had lived with her, he was cleaning out her nightside table, and it has two drawers on the table. And he said, and I cleaned out the top drawer easily. And then when I went to the bottom drawer, it was so stuffed, he said, I put my feet on the end and I pulled all my might, and the whole thing broke apart and came out. And underneath the drawer was the recipe. And and so that's how I came upon our family recipe. It's kind of like we always talk about in the family. It's like the recipe that just does not want to die. It just always pops up somewhere.
That's awesome. So you took that recipe, instead of just rejoicing and then hiding that recipe away for many years to come, what did you do with it?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I wanted to, at first I just produced crumb cakes like everybody would do. You look at a recipe and you say, oh, here's a recipe. Gee, I have cinnamon, I have this, I have baking powder, I have that, and you use it, right? What I wanted to do is I said, how would they have sourced those ingredients back then? Where would those ingredients have come from? I wanted to be true to the original recipe. And it's actually what started me traveling. And so I did a lot of research on the internet, and I found that they would have sourced their cinnamon from Saigon. At the time, it was just Asia, but it's called Saigon cinnamon now. And so that was my first trip. And then I found that they would have gotten their dark brown sugar from the Maldive Islands. They would have gotten their vanilla from Madagascar. They would have gotten their flour from France, and it went on and on and on. And all these places I went to visit to find out the characteristics of these ingredients. And I learned so much on, you know, everyone says I have cinnamon. Well, there's like 60 different cinnamons in the world, and they all do different things. And once you learn that, you can make such a difference in the kind of whatever you're baking, whatever you're making. And it's funny because I have people who know the recipe of my cake, and they say it's just not the same when I make it as when you make it. And it's because I source these ingredients from all around the world. Well, that's what got me into travel, looking for food. That's kind of how that built in.
So just because I feel a little level of modesty here, you had a bakery, this crumb cake bakery that people stood in line for hours.
Yeah, they called them cakers, and they would form a line, start around 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and we didn't open until 6. And I had a bakery that had, like, in New York, if you know bakeries in New York, you know, I had like 70 different pastries, which anywhere else in the country, they go, wow, well, in New York, that's an average bakery. But my crumb cakes were the feature item. And I used to have a line just for the crumb cakes. I had 3 people. All they did was cut a slice, put it in a bag, coffee, check out. And the line never ended all day long. I did, if you know anything about sheet trays, I did anywhere from 50 to 70 sheet trays every day of just my family's crumb cake. And so, I mean, it was giant, popular in the city.
That's incredible. So when this was going on, you know, there's a turning point that you explained, which I thought was a beautiful sentiment. And I've thought about it since you've stated it, where there was apparently a chef or a chef who cooked for JFK. Is that correct?
Yeah, Renee. Yes,
Renee.
Right. Renee Verdon.
What did he say to you that convinced you to kind of go into this?
Well, you know, it's kind of like, it's one of the reasons why I talk about a lot in my book. I talk a lot about opportunities and karma, and you know, I feel it's a lot about opportunities you get and what you do with them. And my family grew up where my mother was Italian, which meant, as you know, if your mother is, whatever your mother is what you grow up. Your father just kind of shows up, you know? And so we grew up Italian, and Italians, everybody cooks. Well, in my family, my father and I were the only 2 people that didn't cook. We would sit in the dining room, because to me, cooking was like mopping floors. I had no interest at all. All my other brothers and sisters cooked. My sister's an excellent cook, a great baker. My brother's a great cook. And so I wasn't interested until I ran into Rene. And Rene was the chef for the Kennedys. They brought him in to bring up the quality of the food in the White House, which until then was like a commissary food. And Rene is the one who taught me that baking and cooking is more like painting or creating. And his logic was, where else in any business, in any job you have, can you create something? I'm not just talking about the food, but how you set up the dish, how you provide the atmosphere, the environment, ambiance, where 25 years later, people will talk about that time that they've had that experience at your bistro. He said, where else can you do that with anything else? And he got me thinking that what I'm doing is really creative, which is what my nature is, to be very creative. And it changed my whole outlook on baking and cooking and whatnot. Just changed it completely.
You know, it's a very powerful sentiment, and when you hear you tell that story, you kind of flash back and realize that and Renee was correct. I mean, my mother-in-law's 94, and just about a week ago, she talked about this caramel popcorn I made at the first Thanksgiving my husband and I were married. She, to this day, that caramel popcorn has to, she's like, it's October, So when you make a 94-year-old woman happy, with a good memory, especially not wanting for her only son to get married, this type of thing, it's a moving thing. And you're right, for its celebration. So congratulations for picking up on that and realizing the power of that. So you continued with this crumb cake recipe. You were kind of at the height of selling sheets and sheets of this. Then what happens?
I never liked the cold. Born and raised in New York, but my mother said, even as a kid, you were the first to come in from sleigh riding and said, I'm cold. And everybody be out there for 2 more hours. I just never liked the cold. And I just got tired of the New York winters. And with my company up in New York, I was working from 5 in the morning until about 1 in the morning, 7 days a week. And after about 10 years of that, I said, you know what, there's just more to life than this. I need to make a change. And clearly the change I need to make is to go to Florida, first of all, to get out of the cold. And so that's what I did. And I had been doing franchising. I had been on the side, been taking companies franchise. And what happened, I had so many people all around the United States that were my clients, and they would come to Fort Lauderdale and they would complain that, you know, flying from Seattle to Fort Lauderdale or Vancouver or Portland is like going to Europe. It would just waste the whole day. And so basically I just looked on a map and said, what cities are, what big airports are in the middle of the United States? And there were 2, Chicago and Dallas. Wasn't going to Chicago. I knew it was cold in Chicago, so I wasn't going there. And all the thing I knew about Dallas was the show. And I didn't know if I had to wear a cowboy hat and boots or whatever, but I was going to Dallas. And so we packed up and we headed on to Dallas, and I've been there ever since. And, you know, you're 4 hours from everywhere in the United States, in Dallas. And that was a really good change for me. It really helped a great deal.
You know, we're going to have to take a break here pretty soon, but I want to start a story that is something that you decided to do. So can you start the story of the woman who called with brothers that had been infighting for many years?
Yeah.
And what her bright idea was, and then we will take a break and continue on what happened to that story.
She came in one day to my bistro and she said, I have 2 brothers where they're in their 70s. I haven't talked in like 30 years. And I'm really worried that one's going to die and then they're going to be, I should have talked to them. I should have made up. She said, I don't remember what they argued about. And so she said, what I want you to do is send 2 gift cakes, which is what I do. I ship gift cakes all over the world. And she said, I want you to send it to each one from each other with a gift card. And the card should say, and I don't remember exactly, but basically the card would say, I don't know why we were fighting, but if it's my fault, I apologize. I'd love to just get together. Please accept my apologies. Let's talk. And I didn't see her for about 3 months, which drove me crazy because I'm dying to know what happened. And then she came in and I asked her what happened. And she said, well, they're not the best of friends, but they talk all the time. She said it took them about 10 minutes to realize neither one sent the cake. It came from their sister. She said, but then they laughed, and she said, they're talking now. And it got me thinking. And so what we started doing is, stop there?
Stop there, because
okay.
The story is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still a great story nonetheless. And
it was great. I felt so good at what happened. That's one of those things where it's worth it to make something that makes a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely.
Where else can you do that?
And we're going to be back with J. Stephen Sadler on how he made a huge difference in people's lives.
What started as a love letter to her son has become an international love letter for all parents to their children. Now you can read acclaimed author Shanalee Sharboneau's story to your children. When her son was very sick, she calmed him by singing her own song to him. She turned that song into the book, My Mama Loves Me, I'm Her Little Boy. She wrote 3 more magical books for all parents and kids 6 and under. Available at Indie Lecter, Amazon, and all local and national outlets.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Thank you for watching or listening to this show. Indie Lecter is proud to sponsor this programming. As a thank you for listening or watching, we would like to give you a 10% coupon code that you can use on our bookstore at indielector.store. Use coupon code VIDEO19. Again, that's indielector.store, coupon code VIDEO19 for a 10% discount on any purchase. Thank you.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us.
Welcome back. My name is Shanalee Sharboneau, but that's not the important thing tonight. The important thing tonight is I'm talking to author, chef, crumb cake maker, a person who can make wishes and dreams come true, J Stephen Sadler. So welcome back, J Stephen.
Hi, tell you, Shanalee.
So we left off on a great story about a pretty cunning sister trying to get her brothers to talk because of an argument that, you know, God knows where they start, but they need to stop. So it got the brothers talking, even though they figured out the sister was up to something, like most sisters are. But you took this thought and this idea further. So what did you do?
Well, you know, I thought about it and I said, this could be a great way to help other families put people together and whatnot. And we sat down with my team and we said, but how can we get this out? We're not going to just say, oh, send a cake to your brother and make up. And we threw so many different ideas around. And finally, I came up with an idea to do what we call diplomacy cakes. And what we started doing is I would send a cake, well, usually it's whenever something happened, but it ended up being maybe every month or two, to well-known parties that were fighting. Like I sent cakes to Charlie Sheen and NBC from each other. I sent cakes to John Boehner and President Obama. I sent cakes to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, Shaq O'Neal and oh gosh, I can't remember his name. And so I picked every industry I could think of. And they actually generated a lot of interest because they get a lot of PR. And in fact, when I sent a cake to Putin and the president of Ukraine when the Russians invaded Ukraine, it made Broadway's, that big TV that's on the middle of Broadway, 42nd Street, it made that saying, will Crumb's Cakes settle the dispute between Putin and the president of Ukraine? And I mean, we must have gotten 1,000 calls from that, which was pretty funny. As a funny aside, I have to tell you, you don't hear usually from people when you send these cakes out. That isn't the idea. But I did get a letter from John Boehner at one time, and he was very nice. The cake was wonderful. We loved your cake. Everybody enjoyed it. And it was very funny. At the end, he put, P.S., it didn't work. And I thought that was pretty funny. But we constantly do that. I have to tell you that I'm a little bit more picky because I usually send cakes to someone who's in the news that has some major thing happening. And my people are laughing because I told them that I think Donald Trump actually does all these tweets so he can get free cakes from me. Because I've stopped sending Donald Trump cakes because I've just sent him too many cakes. But I still do that all the time. And it's a lot of fun. We get a lot of interest from people. And what's even better is we get people that call me and say, I want you to send one of those to my uncle and aunt or to my brother and sister. So I love when that happens.
That's awesome. And I appreciate, you know, with kind of the environment going on today and how it's going to go down in history, that, you know, that you're just making a good statement, bringing love into a very tumultuous time of history. So, you know, sometimes it just gets down to the cake and the popcorn. You know what I mean?
You know, everybody can eat together, whether you're Republican, Democrat, you know, pro, con, we all have to eat.
That's so true. So you actually came up and decided to do a book, which congratulations on the very high ratings.
Thank you.
Is called The Quest for the Best, a story of an unlikely chef who built an improbable empire from a lost family recipe. So let's talk a little bit about your inspiration and how this happened and kind of a tidbit of, you know, how this would be interesting to all of our viewers out there.
Well, you know, I'm a prolific writer. As my mother said, nobody would be able to put my pen down. I love to write. So whenever I traveled, I would write about what I would travel. Whenever I was searching for recipes, I would write how I searched for those recipes, what I went into, what I found. And it's funny because a lot of people will think my book is for foodies or people who love to travel. Okay, and granted that it is, but I get comments from so many people that read my book that it's a story of chances that life provides and how our lives change, what we do with those opportunities. Great example is when Renee came into my life. There was a chance and I moved forward on it. When I started traveling to find the ingredients, there was a chance encounter. I didn't mention to you, but I had a chance encounter in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport that caused me to start doing my cakes again. I hadn't done my cakes in years. The recipe was put away in the attic. And someone ran into me that had bought my cakes in New York 10 years earlier. And he asked me if I would make him a cake. That's what got me doing the cakes again. So, you know, some people call it karma, others luck, still others who call it being in the right place at the right time. Whatever you choose to call it. My book's a lot of how you react to those opportunities. It becomes kind of a blueprint for your life. Mm-hmm. And it's the story of all these things that took place, the lost family recipe, what I did with it when we found it, all those things, all those stories of what took place, how I wasn't a chef and my family still laughs today that I'm the one that's a chef when they all were the ones that cooked growing up. I mean, all those little things are chances that kind of come your way, and what you do with them is what you make of your life. And that's a lot of what my book is.
Yeah, and it is definitely intriguing, and because it's almost as if you can take, it doesn't matter if it's making a widget or making a cake, you know, you took something very near and dear to you and just kind of saw the opportunities kind of go past and grab them. And I think a lot of people sometimes have regret or wonder if they should or what have you. So I think the book would be very powerful for people to kind of, you know, feel that getting out of that, okay, I'm just supposed to get up in the morning and get my child ready for school, you know, something that makes life exciting and thrilling again and different, you know, and unique, which is what you've done. So you traveled. I mean, it went from recipe stuck in the drawer, you know, now you have a bistro and a book and traveling. Talk about that.
Well, again, here's one of those things that an opportunity came up. I had mentioned I traveled a lot to find these different ingredients for my cakes. Mm-hmm. Along those trips, I had to eat. And as a chef, I found all different places and found dishes. I would talk to the chefs, learn the recipes. Well, I had all these great recipes. And I brought them into my bistro. And so my bistro has every dish is from a different country. So when you go into my bistro, we call it an international bistro, and it's in small town America, and which is unusual because most people in small town America, they want meat and potatoes. But they love trying these new dishes. And every time I go on a new trip, we're packed with people in there waiting to find out what I brought back and what we're going to do as new dishes. And this is a great example of taking an opportunity. Here I am traveling for finding ingredients for my cakes, and I decided this would be a great way to find ingredients for my bistro, to bring a unique bistro, not just the best burger, but something unique. And secondly, I had so many people say to me, yeah, I'd love to go with you. You go on these great trips to find all these recipes, and you're all over the world. Well, guess what? Instead of saying, oh, yeah, I started taking people with me. And now I go to trips all around the world. We just came back from South America. We went to Cuba 6 months ago. I just came back from Buenos Aires, Santiago, and Uruguay. And I had 10 people with me on each one of those trips. Had a great time. And what we do is I take them with me. We rent out a big B&B. I make them breakfast every morning. They do what they choose to do during the day. And at night, we go to different restaurants and pick dishes that we're going to bring back to small town America.
Wow.
And it's all kind of built together.
Yeah, and what is the name of your bistro, dear, and where is it located?
It's the same name as my company. It's called Crumbz, Crumbzz. It's funny, we tried to be cute. Instead of crumbs with an S, we said, we'll do Crumbzz, and everybody will say, oh, that's unique. Half the people say, oh, I was at Crumbz's. We go, no, that's not what we were trying to go for, but okay. So it's Crumbz with 2 Z's. It's in a little town about, it's about 18 miles east of Dallas. Downtown Dallas. It just is an interesting side. I was approached about 6 months ago by a company who said, what you're doing is so interesting. We'd like to do a pilot for a TV show. And they followed us to Cuba. They filmed the whole trip with the people I took to Cuba, filmed it all. It's in production now. Whether it ever gets taken or not, I don't know. But who knows, we might be doing a TV show. But it was an opportunity, and I took it. And that's all I can say. You have to, when they come, you have to grab the opportunities. Just grab them and run.
Absolutely. Well, we are talking to the very interesting J. Stephen Sadler, and we're going to be back right after this.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? I'm Charlotte Kenyon, award-winning author of the book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. That was a question I had to ask myself some 16 years ago. And you'll have to ask the same question. I had a father-in-law with dementia, a mother with Alzheimer's, and a dad with Parkinson, all at the same time.
What would you do if you found out everyone on the town council were thieves and murderers? That's what happened in Bandera, Texas in 1873. John Cruder was the marshal, yet he needed to operate outside the law in order to balance the scales of justice. He is the Midnight Marauder. You can find his books on Amazon.com and TopWesterns.com in paperback, digital, and audio. I'm Roy Clinton, and I hope you'll read The Midnight Marauder.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Well, welcome back, y'all. I am talking to J. Stephen Sadler. This is a gentleman who's got a wonderful bistro by the name of Crumbs up in Dallas area, Dallas, Texas. So if you're ever in that area, definitely I'm stopping by. I can tell you that. And he wrote the book, Quest for the Best, the story of an unlikely chef who built an improbable empire from a lost family recipe. Where can people find you, J. Stephen? I'm sure they're going to be looking for you quite a few places. So
There's a couple of places. My book is available on Amazon. It's also available. I have a website that's jstephensadler.com, and that's the letter J, and then Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, Sadler, S-A-D-L-E-R. So it's jstephensadler.com. And if you want to see about my bistro or my cakes, we have a website there called crumbz.com, and it's CRUMBZZ.com. So those are the three places you can reach me.
So any book signings, any appearances? I know you're
I'm always doing book signings. We were in New York a few weeks ago. We were down in McKinney, Texas. I have a Barnes & Noble book signing in Dallas coming up. Quite honestly, they just contact me and say, hey, you have an opening on this date? Okay, we have a book signing, and I just show up. So I never know. I look at my calendar.
Easy breezy.
Yeah, right.
So any next steps? I mean, wow, you've done so much.
Well, next step is I want to do the rest of South America. My next trips will be to Peru, will be to possibly Brazil, and also to Colombia. And then I want to do the rest of Asia. I've done a lot of Europe, I've done Japan, but I haven't done the rest of Asia, so I'll hit Asia. And we announced that on my jstephensadler.com website. People can sign up there to follow the trips and what we're doing and where we're going. And they can sign up for the trips if they want. They're all inclusive. All you have to do is show up. Show up at Dallas, and we take care of everything else. Wow. So we have a lot of fun.
So we started this story about how dishes are impressionable and how people remember those, whether they're with good times or bad. But
yeah, both ways, you're right.
It's a moment. And what in all your travels, what's the dish that you remember the most?
I'll go this way. The most unusual dish I had were fried crickets, which taste like nuts. They're actually very good. Because it's funny, because I bring these dishes back, and some dishes I decide I can't bring back because nobody will eat them. And other dishes I just can't find the ingredients, so that kind of varies. My favorite country to travel to for food is easily Italy. and nothing close. Italy has the just phenomenal food. And I have to say, I was very impressed with Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is a city. One of the things I always ask my people when I want to see how the trip is, would you come back? And people loved Cuba, by the way, which is real interesting. But Buenos Aires, I had several people that said, I could live here. I would move here. I mean, it was a really interesting city. But if you're looking for interesting dishes, Italy's got the best. No matter where you go in Italy, you find interesting dishes and nice people and great little bistros.
You know, it's ironic you should bring that country up because we didn't cover this before, but we just went to Italy and traveled Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you make sure you stop and you eat the entire way.
Yep.
Yeah. And you talk to people who've been to Italy and they just keep going food and drink, food and wine, get the house wine, get the house wine. But man, you go there and then you realize it's all true. And there's just not words, you know, talk about impressionable. I mean,
it's another place I could live in. I could live in Italy and be perfectly happy. And what's funny is most of the dishes are pasta, so you think you get tired of it. But quite honestly, every town you go to, it could be a town that's 5 miles away, they make it completely different. Yes. It's every town is an experience. And the people are, right? Did you find the people were unbelievably friendly?
Unbelievable. Grandma's in the kitchen. Totally nice. Family first. And they do incorporate that beautiful moment of eating and family into life. And it's something that would just be great if we could find here again, no matter what culture you are.
You know, the U.S. is all about big and fast.
Yeah.
I found that the rest of the world, eating is a social engagement. Life is about eating. It's not what car you have and what job you have and what home you have. It's how many friends you have. That's the mark of a successful person.
Man,
and that's the way to live.
We're going to leave it. I couldn't say anything better than that. J. Stephen Sadler, you are fantastic. Thank you for your time. Definitely look him up on Amazon. Again, his new book, The Quest for the Best, the story of an unlikely chef who built an improbable empire from a lost family recipe. Y'all be good to each other and good night.
You have a good night.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.